So, hey, it is Father's Day weekend, and I thought to myself, you know, there are thousands of dads that attend our church. Who are the best? Who are the best dads that we could get some counsel from? And those guys weren't available, so I got these guys instead.
There you go.
And we just thought we would have a conversation, and just to say it out loud, there are no perfect dads except for one, and that's our Heavenly Father. I was talking, so I got a teenager at home now. I was talking to an older dad the other day, and I was just talking about I don't know what I'm doing, and maybe for some of you when your kids were teenagers you were just killing it, but I'm not. And so I was talking to him, and he said, you know, in the Garden of Eden you had the perfect parent, which is God, and you had the perfect environment, which was the Garden of Eden, and the kids still rebelled. You know, and so he was like, just take it easy. It's all grace. And so just thought we'd have a conversation today about maybe some things that we feel like we're getting right or got right, maybe some mistakes we've made. And then with that, you know, just kind of help each other out. So let's kind of go down the row here to start. Maybe say your name and how many kids you have, and maybe give us the range, because some of you have a whole lot of kids. So name and how many kids you have and the age ranges. And Matt, let's start with you.
Well, my name is Matt, and I have two kids, 4 and a 1-year-old. A 4-year-old boy named Coleman and a 1-year-old girl named Emma.
Good. I'm Steve. I've got 3 kids, Kyle, Aaron, and Shannon, and the ranges are from 36 down to 31, and I've got 12 grandkids, and I won't give you all the names. I won't do it here in this setting.
Could you give names and ages?
I could give names and ages. I could. Yeah, Kylie's 15.
You know I'm not going to make you.
Kylie's 15. She's the oldest. Cruz is 4 months. He's the youngest, and we got a bunch in between. So, yeah.
Big family.
Yeah. So.
Hey, I'm Dan, and I've got 2 kids. Austin is 26, and Brittany is 24. And 2 incredible grandkids. Lincoln is 2, and Addie is 4 months.
Excellent.
I'm Jeff Forney. I have 5 kids. Age range from 29 to 13. Tyler, Holly, Rhea, Emery, Noah, the youngest, and 1 granddaughter, Jada. So quite a few kids. My quiver is full.
You did good.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I have a lot.
Quiver, for those of you who are not Robin Hood fans, they hold your arrows. So 5 is a quiverful, quiver 5. Let's talk about this. So kind of in different seasons. I mean, I've got an 11-year-old and a 17-year-old, and we just did defensive maneuver driving, where they get to slide around in your car. And so he got to take my car and, you know, slam on the brakes in a parking lot and go through cones. So that was fun. But anyway, I got an 11-year-old and a 17-year-old. Matt, you've got a couple of younger kids. You're across the map.
Yeah.
29 to 13, and then you guys have grown children.
Yeah.
So let's just kind of kick this thing around, and maybe let's start with the guys with a little more wisdom.
or just age. Just age.
Or they're just older.
Yeah.
What's something that you look back on and you're like, we're going to talk about the other side of this in a minute, but what's something you look back on and you're like, you know what, I may have did some things wrong, but we got this one right. And what's something you would just say, I got this one right, and it just worked out really well? Is there something that comes to mind?
Go for it. You want me to shoot first here?
You start.
Dan, I know your daughter. She works at the church. She's awesome.
Yeah, she is amazing. She is amazing. No, I mean, we've been blessed with 2 just incredible kids. And I mean, honestly, I wish my wife were sitting up here when you say, what have you done right?
Yeah.
Because she really just, I mean, is the glue to the family, right?
And you would say, I married her.
I married her.
Yeah.
I did one thing right? Anyway, I think just, I mean, looking back, you know, I was talking to my son today. He lives in Washington, and just talking to him about, you know, his life and career and his family and stuff like that. And both my kids have an amazing, strong love for Jesus, right? And I think that, you know, I don't know if it was me, you know, one thing that I did right, but I think just instilling them, you know, the love for God and love for people. and to see them as adults, and you go through a lot of challenges to get there. You know, a lot of times you're like, oh, I'm not sure this is really going to work out. Maybe we should reevaluate what we're doing. But just to stick through, man, and continue to pray for them and to see them as adults that love Jesus and love people, and you know, are investing, you know, in their kids and taking them to church. It's probably the thing I'm most proud of. And you know, knowing one day that, you know, my kids are going to be hanging in heaven with me is the one thing that I'd like to say, yeah, thank you, God. It's awesome.
That's awesome.
So you married your wife. That was a good one.
Absolutely.
Good job.
Number one.
And what I heard as far as the specific thing was you made sure they were in church.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there a season ever, and everybody's story is different, were there a season ever where you were like, oh crap, they're going to go a different way, or, or were they pretty consistent?
No, there was, I mean, there's always that season, right? And it doesn't matter how you parent, you know, and if you've got more than one, you're going to have two different paths and seasons that you go through. And even though you parent them the same way and do the same things, they're going to have different paths and seasons. And yeah, there was a season, and it was kind of towards the end of, you know, my son's college days. And, you know, if he were sitting here, he could tell you the story probably better than I could, where there was a time where I thought, man, I don't know we're going to make it. I mean, you know, there were times, and really hard times, man, where, you know, a lot of tears and prayer and, you know, begging God, you know, just to intervene in situations. And so there's a lot of challenges along the road. It's not always a smooth road, right? But I think, you know, looking back on it now, you know, I'm glad we stuck to it.
Yeah, good. How about you, Jeff? Something you look back and you go, well, at least I got that one right. Yeah.
I married well, so that starts it out. That's the first thing.
2 for 2 on that. Yeah.
And, you know, I think, you know, marrying well and having the support of your wife, it challenges you as a man, helps you to become better. And then when the children come along, you know, you have a couple people to hold a standard for, your wife and your children. The second thing I would say, our family is divided. We go before Christ and then after Christ. We had first 2 before Christ. So I came to Christ later in my life, and so I was nowhere near him when we had the first 2. Our kids really didn't go to church. We didn't go to church. Fortunately for the next 3, we did. But the one thing, and I'm still trying to do well, is I don't force Jesus on my kids, because to me that was a big turnoff. What I try to do is live my life and have them know who Jesus is through there, because I think that would have made the biggest impact in my life coming up. So that's what I try to do. Now, by God's grace, all of my kids are lovers of Christ. Now, it's not easy, and it's not like they haven't strayed. I have a prodigal son, but the thing is, I always tell them, God doesn't have grandchildren. So your relationship with Jesus is your own. And, you know, you can't live on mom and dad's faith. It's yours, so you grow your own faith. And for the most part, I think they've done that well with our help as parents, but, you know, and support, like with Sun Valley. Most of them have been here their whole life. So I think that really helps, is to have, you know, try to live your life as best you can. It's not perfect. They know I'm not perfect. I always tell them I'm not perfect. I'm just saved. And that's just by God's grace. And then just, you know, find your relationship. How do you want your relationship to be with Jesus? It's yours. So just go find that.
Yeah, I remember, so there's this thing I say all the time at Sun Valley. I'll say rules without relationship equals rebellion. And then I'll say, but rules with a good relationship over time will equal righteousness.
Yeah.
You probably don't remember this. You didn't say it, but I kind of got that philosophy from you. And then I was actually hearing another person speak one time, and they said something kind of like it, and I put your philosophy with that. And that's where that came from.
And that's still a work in progress, because by no means am I, but sometimes as a parent we come across like we are, and I always have to be reminded, you know, I've made plenty of mistakes in my life. You know, I remember when I was 18. I remember when I was 29. I don't even want to tell them what I was like then. So, but you know, it's by God's grace, all of it.
Yeah. How about you, Steve? Something you look back at and you're like, well, we didn't get everything right, but we got that part right.
We didn't get a lot right. I'm going to get this right. I married up. So
3 for 3 in the panel so far. Let's just say it. It's 5 for 5.
There you go.
All right.
One of the things I guess I would say is you can't control the outcome. You know, you can do the best you can as a parent, and you cannot control ultimately where your kids end up, and I think that's important. I would say the thing that I always hoped for, and I think we got this right, both Patty and I, is when you think about unconditional love, it's so important. We learn about it in church relative to our relationship with Christ. But with our kids, I always wanted to know that my children would know absolutely with certainty that they couldn't do enough good to earn any more of my love, and they could never do enough bad to lose any of my love. And that was it. I figured if I could teach them that when they were young, it would be okay when we got old. And there have been so many times and things and situations in our lives where they messed up. We messed up as parents, but they messed up. And they knew in those moments that they hadn't done near enough bad to lose the love that Patty and I had for them. And I think if we can teach our children that and they can learn that concept, that will live with them for a lifetime and eternity.
Yeah,
So,
that's good.
yeah. And then one other thing, this is really important, and I'm going to give Patty credit for this, but we got this one right, and she drove this. And that is, we had 3 kids. We now have 12 grandkids. And it was like super important for Patty that each of our kids support their siblings in whatever it was they did. Games, concerts, you name it. And we have video of, you know, Kyle playing basketball and Aaron and Shannon in the background going, "Why are we here? I can't believe you." You know, video after video, and Patty, she recorded it all. But we taught our children we support each other as a family. We're always there for each other as a family. And now we've got 12 grandkids all in the valley. When there's a soccer game, the cousins are all there. The cousins are all there because of what really Patty and then myself drove home with. We're going to support each other as a family. So those are 2 things that I think, you know. Yeah.
That's great. I've known Steve for a long time, and one of the cool things I saw on social media recently, so 12 grandkids?
12 grandkids.
So Steve's written a song for each one of his grandkids. He rips off the melody from famous songs, right?
That's right. Yeah, later. As I got better, I was ripping off, melodies. Early on, they were pretty lame, but we got one for all 12, right.
We can't show it in the service today because of licensing issues, because he ripped part of it off. But if you want to go on my social media, I'm going to post something on there that Steve did with his family to sing over their youngest grandson, whose name is Cruz.
Yeah, Cruz, yeah.
And it is super cool. Pastor Chad Moore on Instagram. Check that out, and I'll post that on there. Matt, kids are a little bit younger. We have been in a pandemic, lock it down situation. How crazy is it at your house with, tell me the ages again?
4 and 1.
4 and 1. Are you surviving? Are you making it?
Well, I mean, I have to reiterate what everyone else said. The wife is key. She's at home with them right now, too, so... we are surviving I would say we're thriving, we are very much coming together, and the intentional time together has been really a blessing for us.
Yeah. Matt is one of our newest members on staff, and he's going to be leading here in the near future, kind of in this season of being an apprentice in some way. So you're going to see more of Matt in the near future. But Matt came out of education. You were actually the principal at my son's school for a little bit when he was in...
That's when you were Mr. Moore.
Kindergarten and first grade. Yes, I love being Mr. Moore. Let's just go with that. It makes me feel important.
We'll stick with that.
This is kind of a sidebar question, but it just came to mind, so I'm going to ask it. So you've literally seen hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of elementary age kids. You've been in education for a long time. You've seen parenting done right, parenting done wrong. Right now we're in the realm of what's right. Is there something you've just seen maybe a dad do, or dads collectively through your time as a leader in education, that you were just like, I learned something from that guy, or generally from this group of dads, that, man, if we could just all repeat that, that would be a win?
The first thing that came to mind is when I was teaching 5th grade. This dad, whenever he would come in, he'd come to everything, and he would say, I'm so excited to talk about my favorite topic, his son. And it was,
That is excellent.
man, I learned so, it made such an impression on me, just the way we speak and talk about the people that we love. And, that's exactly what I want. People to think when I talk about my kids, like that is my favorite topic.
Yeah, that's great. That's good. I'm glad that popped in. That was a good answer. Now, okay, other side of the coin. So, what's something you look back at and you're like, oh man, if I could redo that, I would. And I think we all have those moments. I have those moments. I'm going to talk about it in the sermon. So right now I'm going to give you guys the film time. But what's something you look back, you go, oh man, if I could do that again, I would.
I got one.
A little harder. Yeah.
Actually, mine is like a hidden, proud moment. But I'll just tell a quick story.
you're cheating a little bit.
If you don't mind, can I do that?
Embrace the suckiness.
Well, I have a lot of
Okay,
suckiness.
a hidden proud moment. That's
A
all right.
hidden proud moment. My mother-in-law was driving my son around, and the topic of mistakes came up. And she was like, hey, is it all right to make mistakes? Do you make mistakes? And he goes, yeah, I make little ones. It's okay. But my dad makes huge mistakes, big ones. And she's like, oh, really? Tell me about that. So I had to explain to her later that I've made a lot of mistakes, but nothing too huge. But it was also a really proud moment just because I want him to know that no one's perfect, man. We are all going to mess up, and that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just so dead on. Love is exchanged through reality. Reality is simply humility. And, I think there was a time in parenting where the thought was, never let your kids see you sweat kind of thing and give them the standard and all that. The problem is that just isolates you from your kid. You kind of teach them to lie to you when you have that kind of posture. But when we approach each other with vulnerability, that's very helpful. That's good. What are you guys?
Well, probably gonna make your most mistakes with your oldest one. And so my oldest one is just my son, and that DNA thing works. So all the things that you see your fault, you see in them. And it just grinds you when you see it in them and going, don't do that. And you're sitting there going, well, you got it from me. Yeah. But if it was something I had to do over, and as the other children come on, I hope I've gotten better at it, is to not set a bar, say like, you can't cross. This is the standard. You cannot go past that. And I think I did that a little bit with my older son and my oldest daughter. Like, this is that fine line. And I'm glad God doesn't do that to us, because every line that he's put in front of me, I've crossed. So that's something I wished I could have done a little bit better. Now, in that, with the mistakes I made, it helped our relationship grow, because I had to come back and, have that humility pill and go, dude, I wasn't right. You're going to make your mistakes. I can't set a standard. Christ sets that. Yeah. And he forgives us for everything. So.
Yeah. Just to ask, how many of you have, there's been times when you've apologized to your kids?
Like
today?
But keep your hand up for a second. Yeah, like today. I want you to see this, because this is huge in what we're talking about. An apology, I'm not perfect, will you forgive me, opens the door for a real relationship.
100%. It's one of the best things you can do.
Yeah, the only way to experience real love is to be courageous enough to be the real you. And that's so big, I think, especially with dads. Because moms, that's their job. They comfort you and, oh, you messed up. But to say, I messed up, it's okay to mess up in this family, and we stick together. That's just huge.
Something I'd add, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Something I'd add to that I have a hard time doing is I messed up and not saying, because you did this. Because all of my mess ups tend to come after you messed up. But to model kind of how to really apologize and how to be sincere about that, and just say, you know what, I shouldn't have yelled like that. Yeah. No matter what you did, I love you, and I know that I should never act that way. So I apologize. So.
Yeah, I agree. If your kids can learn from you how to say, I'm sorry and I blew it, that's one of the best things you could teach them. I actually, now that I'm a granddad, 12 times, I wish I could do it over again as a dad. Because as a granddad, you just love your grandchildren. You just love them. And when, your little 9-year-old granddaughter makes that first goal in soccer, she's not gonna play for Team USA. It's not gonna happen, but as a dad, it's like, it's the best thing ever, it's the best thing ever. Or when your young child has a problem with telling the truth, they're not gonna be like serial felons. But as a dad, everything's great or everything's terrible, and you just exaggerate. I did.
Go to those extremes.
I would go to the extremes every time, and I lose sleep over it, and I would have angst over it and all that. And as a granddad, I just love them. I just love them, and I enjoy it. Now, I don't have to bring them home and deal with them, but the truth is, I just have a different perspective, and it's a perspective, I just love you, and I want what's best for you, and it's just really cool. And I wish I could have that attitude over again, I guess.
Let me ask you this. Again, back to you guys, you have a little more maturity on us. And
how do you define that? Is that
I don't know. You guys who are old, you old guys. And I'll start with you, Steve, because I know I've known Steve and his family for a long time. Actually, watched you lead your family for a long time. Back in the day when I was in my young 20s, we went to church together, and some of Steve's kids were in my youth group. But do you? Because you're a pretty successful guy, work ethic, all of that. Do you feel like as you've gotten older, because you talked about those extremes, do you feel like with age and with maturity and in that, hopefully some wisdom, you just chill out a little bit?
Yeah, you really do, because you know that things will get better. You just know things will get better. Now, when we make mistakes and our kids make mistakes, there are consequences. And those consequences vary depending on what the sin is. But I know now that there's a better day coming, and they're going to be okay eventually. Yeah. So I just have that knowledge, and I chill. And it's just a way it's a much better feeling.
Yeah. I think in our culture, there's this little G God, and his name is potential. We got to all fulfill our potential. The worst thing you can die with is potential. And I'm like, the worst thing you can die with is a lack of a relationship with Jesus, There's no end to the potential God's demand. And I think as dads, if we worship the God of potential, we're killing the soul of our kids. Just with that extreme, you got to do this, you got to do, you're the next star of the NBA. Really? all those kinds of things. I just think we've got to gauge that, teach our kids responsibility, success, work ethic. But, we're not performance driven in our relationship with our kids.
Yeah, and I would just say, Chad, that you want to, I want to encourage my grandchildren that they can be anything that they want to be.
Absolutely.
Right? And they can grow and become great and outstanding at anything they want to be.
Absolutely.
But I also want them to know that I love them and appreciate them and value them whatever they do.
Yeah.
Whatever they do.
Yeah. And it's like this constant tension you have to manage, for sure. How about you, Dan? Something you look back on and you're like, man, I wish I could redo that one.
A lot. A lot. A lot of things come to my mind. We've all done stupid things, right? And I think you were just talking about just like the pressures of society, what they put on your kids, and, to play all of these sports and do all of these things and perform in class and then obey, and all these great little, Christian kids running around. And you're right. As a dad, when your kids are younger, you kind of jump to these extremes like, oh, I told a lie, you're going to be, you're going to prison. And you're not. You're not. And so I think just looking back on things I would have done differently, I can relate to you in your defensive driving class, right? One thing I would never do, this is a stupid dad thing, is I thought it was important to teach my kid, my son particularly, I don't know why I was so hard on him, it's just the son-daughter thing, right? I apologize. It's the dad thing, right? But I thought it was important to teach him to learn to drive a stick shift, right? And let's be honest, very few of our kids are ever going to drive a stick, ever going forward, right? It just doesn't happen anymore. But I thought it was important to do it. I had to learn to do it. And so we went out one Sunday afternoon after church, and I put him in my stick shift car. And I made him, I said, you've got to start and stop this thing 10 times in a row without stalling it before we go back home. And
How'd that go?
Oh, dude. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
After like 2.5 hours, and I'm not exaggerating, I was like, I'm sure I said some wonderful terms, right? You're never going to learn how to drive a car, right? You're never going to be able to do this. And we went home after coasting through an intersection or two, and he actually ended up learning to drive a stick, but that's a whole other story. But I think just looking back and like things that I would probably change and do over again is you really can't take back words that you say, right? Mm-hmm. In the heat of the moment. And we're all going to say some really stupid things to our kids. And I wish I could take those things back, in those times, but it's really hard. You can apologize, and we should do that. We raise our hands and say we've all done that. But I think, some of those wounds, I think kids are begging and dying for just encouragement that they're not getting from the outside world. And when they come into the family, that's got to be their safe spot. So I think like one thing I would do is take back some words I'm sure I've said over the years, and even though my kids and I have had this discussion on it, but you're in the heat of the moment, man, pressure's on, and you're going through certain things at work, whatever the case is, and you come home and something blows up, your general reaction is to react, right? Instead of just to sit back and say, hey, when I'm 80 years old, is this really going to matter if my son learned to drive a stick? Probably not. And I'd say this, the second thing I do differently is, I don't know, just using the car analogy again, ride in the passenger seat a little bit more, right? Don't feel like you have to control everything. It's going to be okay. And listen more. Just listen to what they're saying and their dreams and their fears and what's going on at school, and deeply listen to that. I think those two things I would do is talk less, listen more.
That's so good.
I think if I could jump in.
I got to just talk less, listen more. Write that down. I'm making a mental
and
note.
it's hard. Yeah. It's hard to do because you're the leader. You're supposed to be these kids and your point across, and the world's going to end if you don't listen. And it's not that way.
But real quick, on that point, I had a situation similar where my son was just doing stuff I didn't like, and I wasn't listening. And I was frustrated, and I was talking and telling and teaching, and every time we got together, and I started driving him away. And fortunately, Patty came back to me and said, "You're losing your son, and you need to just love and listen." Was her advice, best advice I ever got. And you bite your tongue, and you listen and you love, and eventually that relationship comes back. And then when they make a mistake or something bad happens, who's the first person they call? The person that listened and loved. And so it's super important.
I just. Like literally 2 days ago, I'm in the car with my 17-year-old, and I'm like, hey, you want to go, the restaurants are opening up again. I'm like, hey, you want to go get something to eat? He's like, yeah, can we see if Mom wants to go too? And I'm like, well, I guess, And then she had something going, and we get done with whatever, and I'm like, hey, you want to go get something to eat? He's, no, let's just go home. And so it's quiet for about 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm like, okay, what did I do wrong? He's like, well, I'm like, you always want to, go get something to eat. And he said, Dad, lately I feel like every time we're together, you're just interrogating me. Mm-hmm. And so I, apologized. I'm an idiot. And then he said, I know why you're interrogating me because I did this, and this. He goes, so I get it. He goes, it gets old. And, Pastor Chad here, I'm hearing myself preach, to listen is to love. And so I'm like, yeah. You were going to say something, Matt?
Yeah. What I was thinking about pride. And how often when I become like a driver of my family, and this is kind of what you guys are talking about, like we need to do this, and this is so important. The list of things that are really, really important for your kids seems endless. And by the way, that's probably one of the hardest things as a parent to decide on what it really is the most important and what's not. But when I lose it, it's almost always a pride issue. I want my kids, my family to be seen in a certain way. I want my son, my daughter to act in a certain way. And sometimes it's kind of because for their good, but a lot of time it's a pride issue in myself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'll just say now that you're stepping into full-time ministry here, it's not going to get easier because you have to totally set aside this glass bubble that you live in and go, dang it, they're not pastors' kids, they're just kids.
They're kids.
And I'm going to let my kids be kids. And anybody in the congregation that doesn't like it, they're going to hear from me. I'm going to let my kids be kids so they can succeed and fail and just be who they are. And that's how we all are, and that's how God loves us.
Can I add one thing to that too? Like you know, talking about this in ministry, my dad was a pastor for
I'm sorry, man. You need a hug?
50-some years. I do, actually.
Well, we're social distancing.
No, but I mean, so I get it. You know, the whole PK thing, and you guys didn't have a whole other set of challenges. But you know, it's interesting. Like I always think, like you know, we're really wrapped up in what we do all day long, right? Because we spend the majority of our time at an office or work doing something somewhere, right? And you come home and you kind of have that too. To this day, I would give my daughter $100 if she could tell me what I do for a living. Because she couldn't. She knows where I work, you know, and you know, I know you're on the computer all the time and kind of talking to people a lot and you travel a lot, but like she doesn't know, because I always said, man, I don't, like it's not what I do, right? It's just, I want to be just kind of present, so I didn't really drill into what I did for a living, you know, just because it was kind of my thing, you know, and I didn't want it to be like, it's what we do. Yeah. I don't know.
They don't remember what we do, they remember who we are.
Absolutely, and remember that you're there.
Yeah.
Right, you're present.
Okay, it just occurred to me, we're sitting here having this conversation, and it could be some moms. You're like sitting there going, he better be taking notes right now, right? Like you're thinking that, or it could be you're a kid and you're like, I hope my dad, you know, was watching this. Did he get this? You're handing him a pen and a piece of paper, right? Obviously, it's Father's Day weekend. Let's be nothing but encouraging, all right, to all the dads. Because come on, let's be honest, all of us are screwed up, and we're doing the best we can here. Okay. One last question. What's a piece of advice? So we've talked about, hey, I think I got this right. Hey, I wish I could do that again. But is there some kind of piece of advice that maybe for some of the more mature gentlemen in the group here, you know, if I could go back to when I was 35, 40, this is what I would say. Or a piece of advice just that you would give anybody, like in the realm of being a good dad, just remember this truth.
Yeah, I've got one. You know, when I was a young father, I had these dreams and aspirations of the great things that would happen with and for my kids. And those were what I thought would be the moments I would look back on and say, that was the greatest moment as a parent. And what I found after all these years, the greatest moment as a parent is not the state championship basketball game or the great concert or any of the achievements that my kids have had. And there's been plenty of that, and it's been fun and great. The greatest parenting moments, by far, are the moments when your kid messes up, maybe really messes up, and you are there as a parent to love and to encourage and to wrap your arms around them and say, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. And then you get through it with them, and the relationship grows and is strengthened, and you look back and you say, that was the best parenting moment I've ever had. And in the end, it was the best. So at any rate, don't be discouraged by those really difficult moments. Love them, encourage them, and you'll look back and say, that was it. That's what helped us get to the place we are today.
Yeah. So, can I add on to that quick?
Sure, absolutely.
That was spot on and awesome. And I would just say, just to add on what you just said, is that, like, success is defined, no matter what you're looking at, right, through just a whole set of experiences, right, and constructive, relationships and confrontations and communication and so on. And families are no different. You know, you've got all these experiences you're going to go through as a family, and I agree. I mean, when you ask, like our kids, and we like to play these games all the time right now through text messages. Hey, what was your favorite memory, your favorite vacation, or your favorite thing that we did? It wasn't the big giant moments, as a family. It was like, oh, Dad, you remember that time that, we had to move and, this was happening, that was happening, and, we did something small and it was kind of cool. And those are the things that kind of, that kind of jump back, and they are good teaching moments. It's just these set of experiences, and some experiences are going to be rough, right? I mean, and I would say it's not just about your kids just screwing up and hanging with them, it's about you screwing up, right? And going back and saying, screwed up a little bit, but being willing to admit that, and that it's not about perfection. I always say it's not about perfection, it's about just being present, and just hanging out and fulfilling that responsibility, and let God take care of all the details, And what I would tell myself at 30 is, dude, relax, right? It's like, just relax, right? You're not gonna have perfect kids. You're not gonna be a perfect dad. And it's okay, you know? And there's only one person like on earth that my kids can call dad. And that's me.
That's so good.
And that's me, right? And when they think of me, I want them to smile and have those good experiences. And we grew together.
And when they get old, you just want them to hang out with you.
Yeah.
That's a goal.
And
when I get old, I just want them to hang out, and that's happening.
Like I still...
Okay, I don't want anybody to miss it. He said presence over perfection. So if you're writing stuff down, that's a one-liner you're probably going to hear from me in the future. It's just so dead on. Presence over perfection. Jeff?
I think, through life, we talk about those teachable moments, and a lot of times they occur during adversity. All my kids have been pretty active in sports all their life, and I've always found moments, especially with my sons, I can be hard on them because I was an athlete all my life, and but when adversity happens, sometimes that's when I do my best work because I just shut up and just go, it's nothing you can do or say in that moment of time. Just let them have their moment, learn how to collect, because if they're going to continue in sports stuff, that's going to be a big part of it. And then that helps them to equate that to life. And if it's something, my wife always reminds me, you got to be more of an encourager instead of a driver. She said, you're really good at that. And that's I kind of put it in this perspective for myself. I try to make my kids be like me, how my work ethic, how my drive, but I don't want them to be like me in the bad things. But what I always try to remind them, they can be better than me. Kids, go be better than your parents. Every parent here, I think, would say they want their kids to be better. Absolutely. And sometimes we need to step out of the way and let them do that. I'm not saying that I do, but I work on it. So I like my youngest son here, I've got 4 kids in front of him, and sometimes I think I'm doing a whole lot better, and then sometimes I'm going, dude, I did the same thing with all the rest of them. I want to be different. Well, I think it's some things we want to be the same. It's a foundation. All the other kids, like during this pandemic, what I'm seeing now is my kids are talking to the younger kids about spiritual things. I went, whoa, who taught them that? The mom, but anyway, but they're helping one another. Now, I always used to say, your brother and sister, trust me, will become your best friend. And no. I'm like, down the road, somewhere, your brother and sister will be your best friend. And, it's starting. I'm starting to see glimpses of that. I'm sure you're a little bit ahead of it, you see that. But again, if I bring this all back to, don't try to make them be like you. Tell them to be better than you and help them. Yeah. Help them be that, because you know how bad you are, so help them be better.
Matt?
One thing I pray a lot about is, in Chad, I stole some of this from you. I don't know how much from you, probably all of it, but is to be an advocate for love, peace, and fun in the house. Yeah. And, I think back of my dad and
I suck at that, which is why I have to say it, because it helps me. Yeah.
That's why I pray over it, man.
Yeah.
I pray for you too, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're
Please
welcome.
continue.
I look back at my dad and dads in general, my dad especially. When you think of the memories, you think of the goofy, funny, willing to be embarrassed, not willing, they're not going to be embarrassed. They're just going to go do something goofy. And, those moments are so much more memorable than like the moments, the big moments of awards and stuff like that. So it's a good reminder for me and for all of us to like, man, what are we intentionally doing to be fun in our houses? And it's okay, and from a non-planner, it's okay to plan those things too. It's okay to plan for like a crazy event, whatever it is, just something different that could end up being really memorable.
And you hit on a good thing too. You talk about just praying for your kids. Man, there's nothing more important. Because like I mean, I think everyone up here would say we don't have all the answers, right? But God does, right? And He knows our kids. And I don't know. It's even when you don't want to, right? Even when you're busy, is just put that into practice every day, especially when they're little, and praying with them. And you'll hear the craziest stories, right? And they'll expose the most amazing things at night before they go to bed when they're little. Yep. You know, when you're there praying with them. Yeah. And those are the things that I'll cherish forever. Yeah. That's good, man.
One other quick thing, don't let things simmer in your family. Don't let them simmer. Patty's been really good at this in our family, but get things out. You know, you hear stories about siblings that haven't talked for years, mm-hmm. or parents and kids that, you know, are estranged. I don't get that. It happens, yeah. But don't let it happen in your family.
As a pastor for 20 plus years, it happens all the time in every family.
Yeah, and so
life's too short.
Yeah, it is. I mean, just, you know, if this was your last day, you just wouldn't let that come between you. Get it on the surface, deal with it, talk about it, and come to some resolution, whether it's disagreement or not. Don't let it simmer. Get it out, talk about it, and do that from the time they're little ones all the way until they're adults. Yeah. You know.
Yes, I always tell our kids, we're not perfect. See the imperfections in us, see the good things, because one day you'll be a parent. And the thing is, you get to be the parent that you want to be. You know, I remember things my mom said. I didn't have a dad. I had a mom that raised us. There's 5 big old boys in the house and some girls, and our mom's about 5'2", and she looked at us. We said, "Yes, ma'am." But, you know, it's be the parent that you want to be. You know, I told my wife, I said, you know, I'm going to do the best I can. I said, but I know one thing. I said, by God's grace, you know, I said, I want to be with my kids for their whole life. Yeah. You know, I mean, that was our first standard. And, you know, for me, it really had a significance. I said, I will not leave my kids. You know, no, you know, hell or high water, boom, I'm here with them, you know. So, you know, by God's grace, you know, if I continue on for another 30, 40 years, whatever He's willing, I want them in my life. They're mine, you know. So.
Well, thank you guys for sharing some of your wisdom with us. And as all of you have said, wisdom comes from mistakes and learning from them. And we're kind of all in process. But happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
To each of you.
Likewise, happy Father's Day, guys.
Happy Father's Day. And it's Miller time.